I mention this because you're essentially, you know, the mayor of 1 million people. The U.S. Conference of Mayors, as I say, weighing in. Governor O'Malley had a session with reporters yesterday where he, too, expressed outrage at the violence, the loss of life, and indicating that this will be part of his legislative agenda when lawmakers return to Annapolis in January. Your thoughts on what happened in Newtown last week?
Well, first of all, my heart goes out to the people of Newtown, the victims, their families, and to all of those who are suffering today. It's a real tragedy. I think this is an opportunity for us to look anew at how we, especially how we approach the question of assault weapons. When you have the ability to go in and use the kinds of weapons that we've seen in Newtown, the amount of bullets that can be fired in rapid order, I think that says an awful lot about the carnage that transpired. If nothing else, we should at least address the assault weapon ban anew and try to make some changes. And I think we need to look at this in light of this tragedy and make an improvement that I hope will save lives in the future.
Is it your view that we can have a robust Second Amendment without having it be any kind of gun, any kind of firing system where a bazillion bullets spray out of a gun without even having to squeeze the trigger a second or third time?
I think if you look at all of the Supreme Court decisions up to now reference to the Second Amendment, it is clear that you can have some restrictions and changes that do not violate the Second Amendment. And I think we need to find a common ground therein that provides protection for those who believe very strongly, as I do, in the Second Amendment, but also understand the tragedy that can follow with the number of guns that we have out there, the types of weapons that are out there, and the amounts of bullets that people can fire in rapid order. These are military weapons. The Second Amendment doesn't address those kinds of weapons.
Have Democrats been afraid of the NRA, and does that, pardon me, does that frustrate you?
Yes, in fact, they have been afraid, and you could come from the president right on down, that if you look at the last election, there's very little mention of the assault weapons ban or any kind of discussion about the Second Amendment. And I think there's been unduly focused on the NRA, but I think we need to look anew at this because I think their strength is very much overstated. And even if it is, you need to do what is right, and what is right is about protecting lives and protecting the Second Amendment, and you could do so even if it runs the wrath of the NRA.
What does this tragedy say to you? What thoughts does it put in your mind about mental health challenges that individuals in our society may face? How we diagnose those, how the availability of treatment, and our comfort zone in terms of leaning more forward, if you will, in terms of folks that we might be aware of, even if they're not intimate people in our lives, but just people that we're secondarily aware of who may have serious issues.
Well, first of all, we should not categorize all mental health challenges in the same kind of lump with this type of problem. There are people with mental illness and it needs to be addressed. But you also have to keep in mind, if you go back starting 10, 15, maybe 20 years ago, we changed the paradigm for how we address the question of mental illness. We decided that we would take people out of institutions. We did not fund as robust as we should. And people are in positions today that really need help and treatment, and we have not responded to that. So we have to address that problem, first of all. But we should not overly characterize and stereotype all mental people in this particular category, because there are people that need their rights protected as well.
But to the extent that there might be people out there with festering issues who, if they're allowed to remain isolated, can harm others. I'm not saying that everyone with whatever the issue is a threat. Clearly not in, I'll stipulate, 99% of the cases. But where we can reach out more than we have been, it might be to the benefit of all.
But whether the two things, not only must we reach out, but we also must provide appropriate treatment and care for those who need the help and assistance that we should provide. But keep in mind, as we looked at this gun was picked up from the mother, apparently, not purchased by the person who actually did the shooting. And so there was a chain of command here, if you will, a chain of transaction here, where it went from the mother to the child, and therefore the child got it from the mother. So even if you looked at that person per se, you may not have been able to detect that there was a problem, or would not have given that person a weapon in the first place. It came from the mother.
You're a student of politics. You were a White House fellow. You've been chair of the Maryland Democratic Party, local official, local executive. So, and I value your insight in terms of just politics generally. Gun sales and ammo sales have been skyrocketing since Barack Obama became president.
Right.
Why do you think that is?
Two reasons. Number one, there's been a hype by the NRA and the manufacturers to say, unjustifiably so, that the president will take some action to deter or restrict your ability to get weapons. That was not true. If we looked at the last 4 years, it clearly has not been true. But it also helped gun sales, so it was in their interest to promote that idea, to force people to go out to get weapons. Now, secondly, what has happened, there's been some genuine discussion over the last week or so about some need to make some changes in this inability to purchase weapons. Therefore, people believe now, well, there may be some changes, so I should go out and get a gun now because I may be restricted later on. I think those are the two reasons.
Had you spoken to the superintendent since Friday, and what's Montgomery County doing in the wake of the Newtown tragedy?
First of all, yes, I have spoken to the superintendent, and I'm assured both the superintendent and the chief of police that we're taking reasonable precautions that I do not want to discuss openly on the microphone, but reasonable precautions to make sure that kids are safe, that we have the proper warning systems in place, that schools are secure, and ensure that we protect our children, most of all. But I want to say something else that I think is important, that people fail to recognize the value of our teachers and the people in the buildings themselves. We had teachers, principals, administrators coming to the aid of their kids, putting their lives in danger, and been killed as a result of that. And I think the heroic efforts of the principals and the teachers should be something that we should look at least take that away, because far too often in the last couple of years or so, teachers have been maligned. Look at what happened here, look at their response, and I think that should be something that we should talk about as well.
Virginia Governor Bob McDonnell was on WTOP yesterday and suggested that we should at least be willing to discuss arming educators, faculty, front office personnel, etc. Would you go down this road? No, I think we should discuss it and reject it as quickly as possible, because you could have even more carnage with people who are utilizing weapons in the school system around kids. That's a terrible idea, and I hope we never go down that road.